babe. She's from me.
Well, hey, can I have you both?
Sure. We've had our shots.
I'd buy that for $1.
This is the Blood and Black Rum Podcast.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Blood and Black Rum Podcast. I'm Ryan from coldsploitation.com, and I'm joined with my co-host, Martin.
How's it going?
Doing well. I was remarking to you a little bit earlier about our episode last week on Roadhouse, and that it was a cursed episode. It's never going to be perfect. We're never going to get an episode on Roadhouse where it was just, all rainbows and smiles. It had a fucked up intro, and for about 30 minutes of the show, my mic was off. So, it is what it is. We're not going to go back and re-record it or anything, so sorry about that. But just wanted to state that Roadhouse, cursed film. We've had so many issues trying to record that episode.
So that's a sign from God then, never to touch Wonder Woman 84.
I guess so. That's another cursed one that we just won't even do. We're back this week with another in our line of red hot 80s action summer films. And again, the full title being Part 2, Heatwave Edition. Got to get all that in there.
I love how you remember to do that, but you can't remember fucking John Carpenter Presents. John Carpenter's.
That's because I don't, doesn't mean much to me to have his name plastered on the front of it.
It does, though. It matters enough to him that he's done it for like every film.
Yeah, I guess it matters to him, but it doesn't matter to me. Although I do hear that he's potentially coming out of directing retirement, so maybe we'll see a new John Carpenter's movie pretty soon.
John Carpenter's Halloween.
John Carpenter's this retirement doesn't go as far as I thought it would.
John Carpenter's Blumhouse gave me a script for Prince of Darkness, and I don't want them fucking it up.
I can see that happening. Yeah. Well, anyway, we're continuing the 80s films, action films, with one that is pretty much the quintessential 80s action cyborg movie of all time, really.
Why you gotta preface it?
What? With
it's just quintessential. You don't have to get.
It's a quintessential action movie.
Yeah, you don't have to give it the modifier.
Well, people might be thinking that I'm talking about Terminator.
Well, they're wrong. That's a slasher. That's a slasher.
How about Terminator? Maybe they'll think I'm talking about Terminator 2.
That's from the 90s, so shame on them.
Maybe they're thinking I'm talking about Terminator 3.
No one's ever seen that movie, so it's okay.
Yeah.
Only I have seen that movie more than 5 times, because FX used to play it on like dinner and a movie all the time.
I actually had it on DVD at one point, but I think I still only watched it once. Had it on. I bought it, watched it. Was like, that's going back on the shelf.
Terminator with boobies? Not enticing enough. Skip.
No, we are not talking about Terminator. We're talking about the most prominent Paul Verhoeven movie. Would you say that? Would you say it's the most recognized?
It's tough because Paul Verhoeven does have such a eclectic and catalog in his filmography that he's got a lot of films that are touch-tone films that are very very much part of the cultural zeitgeist. Between this, Total Recall, Basic Instinct, Starship Troopers,
he does.
Hollow Man.
Yeah, he's got quite a few.
Probably, I would say probably RoboCop is his, which is what we're doing today. RoboCop is probably
bury the lead there.
You had to add a modifier to it, so But I would say probably RoboCop is probably the most recognizable Paul Verhoeven film, which is saying something because he's had such a pretty big, from probably 1987 up into 2000. He was probably one of the best filmmakers going at the time.
And I think it also depends on what genre you're talking about too. He kind of jumps into various different genres. Sci-fi, probably Total Recall. Action, RoboCop. And then you have your various other films like Starship Troopers is kind of like a horror sci-fi satire. So,
I would say they're all sci-fi.
Yeah, and
they're all capacity. RoboCop, Starship Troopers, Total Recall. That's all sci-fi. It's all action. There's a lot of action in all those films, and they're all satires. Mm-hmm. Basic Instinct would be the one that's that wouldn't follow that, but Showgirls, that's a sci-fi film.
Yeah.
It's science fiction to figure out how bad the acting is in that film, but I think it's intentional. It's
also important to point out that Paul Verhoeven routinely, especially back in the day, would push the envelope for what the MPAA would allow. Because Showgirls got an NC-17, and they went with that. They were like, sure, let's run an NC-17. But back in the day, too, your films are getting harder than an R. Your producers are saying, "Go, no, we can't shop that. You need to go back and cut it and give us an R rating." And that's what happened with RoboCop too. RoboCop originally got an X rating from the NPAA due to its ultraviolent content, and ultimately they went and cut some of the gorier scenes that the MPAA said were just too much for this film. And we ended up with an R-rated film that was still pretty violent, but it definitely cut down on some of the ultra gore that was a part of the film and its satire. And it's kind of interesting if you read some of the information about the MPAA cutting RoboCop. The filmmakers and Paul Verhoeven and the writers really did not agree with the MPAA actually cutting it because they felt that the over-the-top gore was really like adding on to the satire instead of making it like so ridiculously violent that people couldn't watch it. It was actually so cartoonishly violent that people were kind of like laugh at it because it was so over the top, and so like ridiculously obviously fake, and they thought that cutting some of that gore actually made the scenes a little bit more I don't know,
visceral.
Visceral. Yeah, it's a good word. Visceral, because they really got to cut out a lot of the cartoonishness of it. So in the scenes where Murphy's getting blown away and he's getting shot by shotgun blasts, and we should also preface this by saying we watched the director's cut, which is the X-rated cut, which has been around for quite some time now. They were able to assemble all of the elements from the director's cut and get it into one complete edition. We watched the director's cut, so we did see all the cartoonish elements, and seeing Murphy get blown away and seeing his arm get literally shot off in one scene, it does have a cartoonishness to it that is not necessarily realistic. It's not just all happiness, but it's certainly not realistic where you would think like, oh yeah, that really is going to happen. Murphy's going to get shot 20 times with a shotgun and still be alive. So it's interesting how much Paul Verhoeven pushed the MPAA at the time. Now we don't really have that problem. There's still movies that need to be cut a little bit, and that's generally due to like explicit sexuality and nudity. But we don't have as much of a problem with films getting like an unrated rating. People love that now. That's like help us sell more DVDs and Blu-rays by getting an unrated cut so that we can put it out on a separate disc and then sell it that way instead of the R-rated version.
Well, back in the day, now they just bundle it together.
Yeah.
It's the same thing with like, hey, you want to see the new Star Wars? Cool. Got a letterbox version and a 3x4. Which one do you want? The TV adapted one or the letterbox one? Because that letterbox is very important because that's how the film was shot. So it may, look tiny on your TV, but you get to see the full scope of the picture.
Yeah.
Or you can get widescreen, you Philistine. Personally, if you're not using Laserdisc, then you're a fool. The future is now.
That's right. Oh, also important to note before we get into the movie proper, and probably corresponds to you as well. This film was RoboCop specifically, was pretty notable for making the rounds on TV. Did you catch RoboCop when it was on TV at some point when you were a kid?
I caught RoboCop 2 and 3 on TV.
Okay. RoboCop 3 got played a lot. I did see that one on TV as well.
On UPN, they used to play RoboCop. Oh, yeah. Especially 3. They used to play it all the time. No, RoboCop I had to fetch on VHS.
I specifically remember seeing RoboCop on, I think was it UPN? It was their like, this is the movie of the week. And they would show like a specific movie on UPN. And I specifically remember RoboCop being that one movie because I very, very clearly remember seeing Murphy get blown to pieces at the beginning of the film. And that kind of stuck with me. I was like, holy shit! That happens?
After this family-friendly movie, a nice episode of Monique.
Right. But the one thing about RoboCop and why I wanted to bring that up is because it got a specific TV cut where they had to go back and literally, yeah, right, exactly. They had to literally like go back to the drawing board, grab unused shots from like what they didn't use for like certain angles, and then splice them into the TV cut so that like when Murphy gets shot a bunch of times, we don't see like all of the bullets actually hitting. We see it from like different angles, and we don't see his arm falling off. So we got a specific TV cut, and it also got additional scenes added to it. For whatever reason, that was a thing that they did back then. And same thing goes for like Halloween and Halloween 2. They added additional scenes to the TV cut versions, just because they could. Because I think they wanted to pad out the running time a little bit. And same thing happened with RoboCop. So if you saw it on TV, that was probably a different like version of the film than the true film is.
That would actually be something I would love to see.
Well, pop in your Blu-ray because it's on there.
Filmmakers releasing TV versions of films like Brian De Palma presents Scarface, made for USA Network. And so all the swearing's out, like, how'd you get that scar? Eating pineapple? Instead of the line of like eating pussy, it's pineapple, and so like, yeah, you think I get a scar like that eating pineapple?
Yeah.
So
that's pretty much like what RoboCop did, basically. And actually, if you the Blu-ray and the 4K that recently released from Arrow Video, they have a booklet in that details the differences between like the TV cut and the actual theatrical cuts, and it does go into like all the dialogue changes that they needed to do. It's pretty in depth, so Interesting.
Some poor fucker at Standards and Practices sitting there going like, where do I use to make this make sense? Pepperoni. Well, he'll say, "Holy pepperoni."
Pepperoni. That works with the lips. Yeah.
Mamma mia! No, well, especially like the 80s and 90s, they weren't concerned about the lip syncing. Hell, half the time they'd probably get somebody else to randomly say a word like, "Hey, speaking to my mic real quick, we gotta record this. What do you need me to say?" Well, he says here, "Holy fuck," but we need you to say like, "Mamma mia!"
Like, am I giving my best Italian impression, or no? Just say it straight. Mamma mia!
It's like early anime dubbing,
yeah,
with like how or video game dubbing, like like think Resident Evil, like, "Oh, they're coming for me! Run, Jill!"
It's great. I love it. I love the dubbing. Yeah, I whenever I watch these movies too, I always feel bad because I never watch like the edited versions of them because I'm like, why bother? But at some point I really do need to watch the TV version and just be like, yep, that was the thing they did.
Those were the days.
Yeah, those were the days where it would air as the movie of the week, and you get like a little disclaimer at the front, like, we know this is violent for your kids, but we're gonna air it anyways, and please use parental discretion.
Listen. This isn't ABC's Friday with the Family. Or whatever the hell it was called. What was it called?
TGIF, man.
Oh, okay. My bad.
Thank God it's Friday. You know what's on? Boy Meets World. Then we've got Family Matters coming up. Urkel comes over again. Can you believe it?
And Hanging with Mr. Cooper.
And you know what? To be honest with you, I do have fond memories of those Fridays of just sitting down and like, witness Boy Meets World.
Well, you're a fucking loser.
Boy
I watched.
Meets World.
We were watching Snick over at the Martin house, okay? On Saturday nights. Snickelodeon.
Yeah, I watched Snick as well. I watched Snick, and I very fondly remember going into my room, and the "Are You Afraid of the Dark" theme song comes on. And that was when I transitioned from the living room to my bedroom. And I'd have to run through the living room and be like, get out of the living room. It's dark in here. Who knows what could be waiting?
A Canadian horror show.
Yeah. It's the
scariest
haunted
of all.
cabbie. All right.
That's, you know what? That's something we'll have to do for a Halloween one of these years. Are You Afraid of the Dark?
That would be fun. An Are You Afraid of the Dark fest?
Yeah.
Break tradition of just doing movies and go back to the year one where we just decided that we were going to do anything.
Well,
anything was fair game.
Could always do that again.
It was fun. Yeah, we'll have to do that one at some point. We'll do an Are You Afraid of the Dark marathon, and we'll pick like the favorites or something like that to do a couple episodes. Yeah, it'd be fun.
All right, Pete and Pete month.
We got to move on though, and our intro's like all over the place.
Well, you know what? That's what you get here.
That's right.
Scatterbrain thought.
All right, so
some people, the kids on Twitch call it a stun lock.
What? They call it stun lock?
Yeah, when you get off topic and you start rambling, it's called stun lock.
I've never heard that before.
No, I've heard it from one of the Twitch guys that I actually
Good to know.
watch,
Good to know. I'll have to.
I may be wrong. Maybe I'm misusing it.
Maybe you are. I'll have to put that in my vocabulary. I've never heard that one before.
Stun lock.
Oh man, I'm stun locked. Off on diatribe. All right, so we got a beer on the show here today, and this beer is, I'm confident in saying we've never had this style of beer on the show before. Because I've never had this style before.
We've had this style on the podcast before.
Yeah.
Don't let the cicerones fool you.
So, specifically for the tie-in to the themes of RoboCop, I went out and I got a beer from Industrial Arts Brewing, which may or may not be one that you've heard of before. It's a brewery that is down by Rockland County and closer to New York City. And we've never had them on the show before that I know of.
I think we've done a beer too.
You think so? Maybe maybe one. I can't remember. I know I've had a couple beers by them, but I've not had a lot. So it would surprise me if we did one specifically for the show. But maybe we did. I can't remember now.
It's been 8 years, for God's sakes.
It's true. It's definitely possible that it happened at one point or another. But their main beer that they make, and that we get quite a bit, is Wrench, which is their IPA. But this time, I found in stores, and it's been all the rage lately. It's been the big thing that's been happening in the beer world. I found that they have a cold IPA. And a cold IPA has been around for about, maybe 6 months or so. It's become like a bigger style. And of course, around here in our small rural area, we are like the last to get things. But cold IPA has been making its rounds, and Industrial Arts does make a cold IPA.
In fact, I was going to say, I'm sorry to cut you off. The brewery that we wanted to have today on the podcast, Founders, because they're based in Michigan, their cold IPA doesn't actually come out until next month, so that they've been advertising relentlessly on Facebook, so shame on them.
Yeah, and I did look for a Founders beer, and all they really had were stouts and porters and...
well, we've had most of their stuff already. So.
Well, they had like the Backwoods Bastard, and they had which is a Scotch wee heavy, but it was not something that I was feeling like today. So maybe that's something that we'll have on the show like during fall or winter month, but it wasn't something I wanted today. So I skipped over those. There wasn't anything from Founders that really interested me, and we've done a lot of it already. So I didn't go with them, and I looked for New Holland as well, because that's another Michigan beer. But we don't get those around here. Like, we get a very limited amount of New Holland, and it's almost always the Dragon's Milk. And that's all they had. They had the Dragon's Milk and Dragon's Milk Reserve. We've both had both of those, so I didn't really think it was worthwhile to get those either.
The one like with the vanilla and rye, I haven't even cracked that open yet. That's still sitting on my... All those like stouts that we got from our friend like 6 months ago, they've been sitting on my kitchen counter.
They're coming around to it again, so you can certainly start cracking them around wintertime.
Well, because our friend's a fucking moron sometimes. Oh, it's late spring, so it's 80 degrees out. You know what? I'm gonna get my friends. Here's some Russian Imperial stouts. Fuck you. Get us something enjoyable, something drinkable. I don't need a beer in the cellar, thank you. I don't need a cinnamon roll Imperial Imperial Stout in July. It's the last thing on my fucking mind.
Agreed. I'm that way as well, but to each their own. If you get stouts in the summer, who cares? You like them.
No, fuck you. Yeah, you're one of those assholes. You're the stout exclusive. Like, I only drink stouts because that's what a beer is. Motor oil. Like, I love, like, there's, like, one stout I can think of off the top of my head I could have any day of the year, and that's a Founders Breakfast Stout. Because it's that damn good. And that damn delightful. Other than that, most of them don't. Take your Goose Island barrel ages and piss off. I'll see you in December. Thank you very much. End rant.
Well, so the beer that we have here from Industrial Arts is called Week 312. It is their cold IPA. I'm assuming it's fairly new, since cold IPA has been a pretty big trend lately. And they call it a lager brewed with Nelson Sauvin, Motueka, and Galaxy hops. So the interesting thing about cold IPAs is that they are extremely similar to an IPL in the fact that they use lager yeast in their brewing process instead of the traditional ale process. However, with a cold IPA, the idea is that they're technically brewing the IPA at a higher temperature than a normal lager. So that's what is supposed to set it apart from an IPL. I think all the breweries have sort of like their own, even though that's like the standard idea of what a cold IPA is, I think all the breweries kind of do have their own definitions of what they're considering a cold IPA. Interestingly, from Industrial Arts, they're calling this a cold IPA, implying with the IPA that it's an ale, and then they're calling it a lager, which is a little bit confusing to me. But ultimately, these are pretty similar to what you're going to get from an IPL, except for the process in which they're brewed, for the most part. Now, with that said, you're probably thinking, is there a big difference between how an IPA tastes versus how an IPL tastes versus how the cold IPA tastes? I would say yes. There is a difference between how an IPA tastes and what the cold IPA tastes like. With an IPL, I also think that there is a subtle difference between the two. IPLs tend to taste very lager-like with a very high amount of hops. The cold IPA, specifically from Industrial Arts here, the Week 312, has a very floral West Coast style IPA hop to it, without the significant maltiness that a West Coast IPA would generally have. And that's because of the lager yeast. So it's definitely malted down a little bit. It's a lot lighter than a regular IPA. And what you end up getting from that is a lot of floral hops at the forefront of the beer. It's very hoppy, very citrusy, but not in the same citrus sense as a hazy IPA, and it's certainly not hazy in color either. But it does have a nice, like, lemony, zesty citrus to it. And ultimately, I think it's a really, really easy drinkable beer, but still really high in alcohol content. And this one is 7%, which is traditionally not what you would expect from like a Pilsner lager. What do you think about the cold IPA, Martin?
Yeah, you hit the hammer on the nail there. I enjoy it a lot. I do like IPLs quite a bit. I think it's a style that has been underutilized. It's a style that we've seen done a couple of times. I think the idea, like, I get like what they're going for with the cold IPA. It's a little bit more nuanced. It's supposed to, instead of just being like an IPA where they change like the yeast into it, with an IPL where they're just changing the yeast from an IPA yeast to a lager yeast, so it basically has all the characteristics of an IPA, but it's a little bit, more sessionable, a little bit more drinkable, a little less body. I get that. It's not as nuanced. Here with them, using like IPA, using lager malts in the yeast and kind of changing the process up, it does make for a very good beer. I kind of wish instead of, and this is me being bitchy, instead of being like, oh, it's a cold IPA, it's an IPL. It's just like a different way to make an IPL. I think like the whole cold IPA name is kind of, and this is kind of where I was at back when like NIPAs were starting to become a big thing, where you have everybody trying to throw out their own fucking name for a NIPA. Is it a NIPA? No, it's a juicy IPA. Is it a NIPA? No, it's a hazy IPA. Just pick a fucking nomenclature, stick to it. Other than that, though, it's a very good beer. It's, as you said, got the nice, zesty, piney, lemony, West Coast IPA hoppiness to it. But with the lager malts and the lager yeast and the process, it makes for a very light-bodied, silky smooth, Pilsner-esque beer, easy to drink. I think the fact, too, that it's also above 6% alcohol, which most, lagers are in the range of 4 to 6% ABV, with it being 7%. It's definitely, I wouldn't, it's not, lager in that aspect, but this is definitely a very good beer. I can definitely see, why I like the style. Like, to kind of compare it to like a weak IPL that I always remember is like Yingling when they did like an IPL for like a year. Like, it was like, oh, they added hops to like a lager. That's cool. Wasn't anything like outstanding, but like you could see the merit of the idea. And so I'm definitely going to be more interested in seeing cold IPAs develop as a style. Maybe they're, going to fall out of favor. But I would like to see, different brewers kind of give a different spin to it. But I think the whole cold IPA name nomenclature, that's a fucking terrible name. Just call it an IPL.
Mm-hmm. Stop
trying to bougie it up.
The other thing that I really get from this beer too is when you crack one open, the floral hop aroma to it is very strong. I don't know, and like I said, like we've never had cold IPAs before, so this is our first time with a specific cold IPA. I don't know if other cold IPAs have this as well, which I would doubt, but the Industrial Arts one has a very, very significant floral hop aroma to it when you crack it open. It's very nice. It very immediately you're bombarded with the hop flavors, and I think that's a great way to have an open can. And one other thing that I would say too about the cold IPA, even if it does somewhat mimic an IPL, and you question the categorization of a cold IPA versus an IPL and the moniker, I do think that it is an interesting new, or at least not new, but a nice change of pace from all of the hazies that we're currently getting. I definitely, if I were to be honest about the haze craze, I think that we should probably try to start pivoting away from constantly making new hazies. I think that the cold IPA is a refreshing, different IPA flavor that I would like to see more brewers go for.
Which we're starting to see too with Fidens, our local world-renowned top brand IPA maker. They're starting to pump out some West Coast IPAs.
Mm-hmm. Yep, transitioning out of the haze stuff, and
I mean,
I that's fine. Like there is a time and place for haze, but not everything needs to be hazy. And I like that the cold IPA is sort of trying to transition away from having everything be a juice bomb cluster.
Well, you know what? You better go and apologize to Sloop right now, because that's all they do.
Well, they do a couple other things too.
What do you mean? What do you mean we can't re-release the same beer but with a different label on it?
I'd like to see their take on the cold IPA.
I would like to see their take on a brewed IPA. Bring back that style, the champagne of IPAs.
That was another thing that was mentioned during the cold IPA articles that I've read. Is that
that's like a brew?
Yeah, the brew was another attempt at trying to transition out of hazies that never caught on. Who would know? Who would have thought that people who are attracted to juice bombs were not going to be so attracted to champagne-like beers?
Dry,
dry champagne-like beers. Who knew?
I do miss. Honestly, I think out of all the IPAs that they kind of tinkered with, I'm kind of glad to see kind of died to death as soon as it came out was the black IPA.
Mm-hmm.
They're okay, but I was never anything that I gotta have one of those.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still waiting for. Where's the white IPA? Where's my Belgian style IPA?
It's not being made that much.
Well, it should be, because it's the pinnacle. Mm-hmm. It's in the beer book that I have for top white IPAs. The Saranac White IPA, which hasn't been made in a fucking decade.
It's good stuff.
Sad.
All right, so let's transition out of the Industrial Arts beer and into RoboCop, into a industrial hellscape of Detroit, circa the future, or in this
near
case,
future.
Probably the past now, but the near future, in which the police force has been privatized by an evil corporation called the Omni Consumer
Omnicorp.
Products, or whatever they call it, OCP.
Omnicorp.
And they've basically been assembling a police force that does their bidding, and they've wanted to create basically a robot police force that can police without the danger to police humans. So they've created.
I was gonna say, let's be fair now to Omnicorp. They didn't just get they just didn't become the police force. Government gave them control of that. So,
the government was like, "Yeah, here you go.
Here, we'll sign this contract, sure."
And they use this contract to create a police robot. Basically, it's called the Ed 209. and that Ed 209 prototype fails spectacularly. And in the, like I said, we watched the director's cut for this one. In the director's cut, there's an amazing scene that gets kind of cut a little bit in the theatrical cut, where the Ed 209 goes on the fritz, and they had a volunteer from the board basically step up and be like, "Here, you hold this gun in front of him, and let's see what happens."
Hold on, I love that. It's not even just it's a fucking Desert Eagle. So he's got this big fucking unwieldy,
Yeah.
pistol, that oh, I use it in Call of Duty because it's so big and badass,
Yeah, it's my one tapper.
Oh, hold on, set it down. Okay, you got 20 seconds to comply. Well, I did it. And then 15 seconds. Oh, what's going on here? And then I love how he's trying to run behind people.
Yeah, run behind other people.
and they're just like, fuck you, buddy.
Yeah, they're pushing him out of the way. They push him into so that everybody runs away from him. All the women in the room are screaming. And eventually the Ed does what it's supposed to do to criminals, just blow them away. And
I think the satire of this film got lost on a whole generation of people.
Mm-hmm.
I think police department saw this and they took notes. Like, guy's got a parking ticket.
That's a great idea. Yeah. That's a thing. And I wrote a review for Coldsploitation just not too long ago, and that's what I talked about a little bit. It's RoboCop is not really far removed from what we've seen currently in the police force. It's certainly still very militarized. We've seen that happen in multiple contexts, from the Black Lives Matter movement with riot patrol to what we saw at the the January 6th insurrection of the corruption in the police force. We still have the same problems that RoboCop is talking about. RoboCop is coming from in a specifically 80s perspective of Reagan politics, but it's really not far removed from what we have now. And I find that really interesting because this film is now like 35 years old, and
still timely.
Yeah, we didn't go very far, because the film is really, it's a satire of the police force being privatized and what that means, and what unchecked militaristic control in the police can do. And
I would say not only that, mainly the thrust behind that though is the corporatism being unchecked.
Yep.
And then also too, you have the 24/7 news cycle, which this film does so much more brilliantly than that fucking remake does. Of like, yes, it's 2012, Fox News, bad, question mark?
Yeah.
It's like, we know. Like, it's like done so much more tastefully and smart and
the
seamless.
The way it obviously that came way later, but the way that they do all the broadcasts and the commercials and stuff was aped very well by the WNUF Halloween special, because they did a very good job of basically capturing the same elements for their special in that movie as RoboCop has done here, which is adhere to some very specific tropes of the time period, and not only that, but use the ideas of advertisement titillation and just ridiculous misogyny within its cutaways as well, because there's
Bigger's better.
What's that?
Bigger is always better.
Yeah, there's that great whatever that is, what is it, it's like a TV show or whatever, where the two women are with the guy. He's like, I'd buy that for $1. And you just have that great everybody's addicted to that sexual titillation on TV. It's great. RoboCop does a really good job with the satirization, but you're right. I do think that it is somewhat.
I was gonna say it's Bixby Snyder.
There you go, Bixby Snyder. Yeah. But I think
make sure I just wanted to make sure I spelled his name right, because when I was like spelling it into Google, because I knew it was Bixby, I was getting Binksy from fucking Hocus Pocus.
Yeah, but I think like RoboCop does a good job of the satirization where it is not explicit. You know, like it's not like beating you over the head with it. But you're right. At the same time, I do feel like a lot of people did miss the point of RoboCop entirely. And it's kind of lost on them.
Which is amazing.
And that's the idea.
It's honestly amazing. It'd be like watching Starship Troopers now. It'd be like, wait, they're anti-fascists?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought fascism good. Like,
and that's the thing too, like about the violence in the movie that they were talking about, is that like that first scene where you have Ed 209 blowing that guy away, and especially in the director's cut where he gets literally like just
mutilated,
minced.
Just turned to pulp.
Yeah,
turned to pulp.
It's like, it is ridiculous because the squibs are just it's not realistic at all, and you're meant to see it as like so ridiculous in this setup, because later on you have like Dan O'Herlihy, who plays the old man, the guy who runs Omnicorp, and he doesn't really get a name. And he's just like he just like meets with the guys, the programmers of the android, and he's like, I'm so disappointed. It's just like, this man was just murdered.
No. It's not just disappointing. He's like, we're gonna lose millions of dollars because of you.
$50 million because of you.
In interest payments alone, because you fucked this up.
Yeah, it's great. It's great.
Never mind the man. And then after that, when fucking Bob Morton, played by Miguel Ferrer, shows up, he's like, well, we have a contingency plan to this. He's called RoboCop. He's like, sounds great. Can you get it to me in 20 minutes with your team? Sure can. And everyone's looking at him like, oh, and he's like, I saw a point and I jumped in. That's what it's all about. Because, you know, that corporate world, you gotta take it, you know.
It's great because RoboCop shows us like the ugliness of the corporate world, and Bob Morton is the perfect example of that, of a guy who has to get ugly to make it anywhere in the executive corporate world. Then there's that scene where they go into the bathroom and he's talking about Dick Jones, who is his like basically the number 2 in command at Omnicorp, and he's saying like he's a pussy.
I say the guy that commissioned the EdBot.
Yeah,
you know.
He's saying like he's a pussy. He doesn't know what he's doing. They're like, we got RoboCop. Ours is the greatest. And then he's in the stall and he comes out. Taking his shit. He comes out and everybody runs away. And he stands
the one
up.
The one guy even unzips his fly up before he's done pissing, pisses his pants a bit, and runs off.
It's great though, because it shows you like the corporate atmosphere that is so reviled by by Paul Verhoeven.
Didn't you like the stock tickers above the urinals too?
Oh yeah. How can you piss in peace without knowing where your stock's at every waking minute?
At the Dow Jones, like. Oh, yeah.
Now you don't need stock tickers anymore. You got the stock ticker right on your phone. You just hold that open while you're peeing
or taking a shit.
Mm-hmm.
But the opening is, you know, very good. Like, again, like we get the nice, you know, news broadcast, which again is very seamless, and you know, again, it very, you know, feels, you can feel today of it with the 24/7 news cycle, with them saying like every 3 minutes, you want to know the news? We know the news, and then you're seeing like you know. All this ridiculous shit, like the whole Star Wars thing, which people don't probably remember, that the idea of Star Wars was something Reagan pitched back in like 82 or something, or 83. Like, we're going to have a satellite system called Star Wars, and it's going to be able to shoot laser beams down to take any potential Soviet nuke out if they were ever to launch a nuclear missile. And they put it in the fucking film. Because it's such a fucking stupid, ridiculous idea. Like, you know, like, so it's like, you know, it's hilarious, and then like all the news is nothing but like what we see in the news today. There's no like, and little Timmy today went out and, you know, ran a lemonade stand and served the community. It's, well, we're involved in this conflict, and we're involved in this conflict, and this cop was killed, and this cop was killed, and How are we doing? Not so good. Here's the commercial for you. It's all very seamless and, works really well, and it's really good.
Yeah, I think they do a really good job with all that satirization, and that's kind of like what RoboCop is known for. Besides the action, is the different ads that it has in it. It's just a really great, in the news cycle that it has. It's very prescient as well of what was to come with the media cycle and how bombarded we are with constant media. And now, like you said, with the new RoboCop, that kind of like almost.
They weren't trying when they did it.
Yeah, it's almost like
because again, by 2012 standards, being like Fox News bad isn't it's not a
revelation.
It's not a revelation. Like by then, it's like, yeah, we know, we get it, and then the whole tying it into Iraq and Afghanistan is a nice modern point, but it was done so haphazardly, with kind of the ed bots kind of being more like drones, and being like drone strikes. Very fertile ground for satire and commentary. Incredibly piss poorly done.
The other thing that RoboCop does that we see in a lot of other films from the 80s is specifically the vigilante films of the 80s. Which were proliferating at the around like the earlier to mid 80s, is the fact that it plays off of the public fear of cities and the crime that's endemic to those cities.
I think
specifically Detroit.
I think this film alone killed Detroit's reputation.
Yeah, right.
Because to this day, you still hear people say, "Don't go to Detroit. It's a crime-ridden asshole." And it's like, they got Detroit-style pizza, Founder's beer, and the Tigers. Comerica Park's supposed to be lovely. I think I'll go. Yeah,
no, but it did play up that idea. It's kind of like the same thing that New York City had too.
Which in the 70s, yeah, no. But fun thing to say too about going off that was talking to my college roommate the other day. He was saying how he's going to Chicago and how his parents were saying, "Be careful, you might get shot down there." And he's like, had to tell his kids, like, no, we won't get shot down. You don't have to worry about anything. Right. Because... Yeah,
this film kind of satirizes that, too. It plays up the fear that, the crime is just... criminals are just running rampant in Detroit. And it shows that...
Old Detroit.
Right.
Detroit.
It shows that, but then it also shows that, hey, those same criminals that are running rampant are actually being funded by Omnicorp. It's like the side business that Omnicorp has at the same time that they are creating androids and robots that will become part of the police force. Because how can you can't fund the police force and privatize it if you don't have crime.
Or people to keep, which is that kind of goes with modern day broken windows policing. I don't know if you know what that is, but broken windows policing is basically like, this is done especially in New York City during like Giuliani and Bloomberg's tenure as mayor. You go down to neighborhoods where there's high crime and you look for crime because, well, there's already, broken windows. Mm-hmm. So like, you're just going to, basically going to look. You're looking for trouble instead of, trying to actually do something.
Yeah, and that's that's basically what they're doing here. Dick Jones is on the one hand creating a robot like Ed 209 that's going to take on the police force, and then you also have on the other hand he's paying Kurtwood Smith's character Clarence Boddicker and his group of criminals to do his dirty business, like take out Bob Morton because he's pissed at him for basically
disrespecting the company. Disrespecting the company. Can't have that.
Exactly. And so you have that irony of the corruption in the corporation and ultimately systemically the government and the police force being one and the same. It is a nice satire of, taking on the criminal element, the war on crime that you get in RoboCop. We haven't even talked about RoboCop specifically. RoboCop as a character, Alex Murphy, played by Peter Willer.
Bless you. Willer?
No, I didn't say Willer. I know it did come out like that, but I said it weird. Peter Weller. I know it did probably sound like Willer, but I truly in my head did not say Willer.
You were hoping somebody wouldn't hear that right now, and
yeah, it did. It did come out weird. It must have been how I rolled my tongue or something. But yeah, Peter Weller. Like, so what I was saying is, like, Peter Weller has a particularly shitty bad first day, right? Because it's his first day transferring over to this new precinct. Gets a new partner, name's Lewis, played by Nancy Allen, who has just finished kickboxing a criminal in the precinct before they go out on their drive around. It's his first day doing this, and all of a sudden they encounter the Boddicker and his gang, and they track him down to an abandoned warehouse, which, of course, if we know in true 80s fashion, every place in an 80s movie has, 18 different abandoned warehouses that criminal elements like to hang out in. In this case, it kind of makes sense in, like, the bummed out old Detroit. But he tracks him there, and Lewis makes the decision that they're going to go in and try to take on this gang, and he gets blown away in the first day on the job. It's a pretty bad day.
Opposite of Ice Cube's Today Was a Good Day.
Right, exactly. And I specifically blame Lewis for this because he gives her the option. They pull up to the warehouse. They know they got to go into the line of duty, and he says, "I'll let you make the call." Lewis says, "Let's go in. We're going in without backup." It's fucking her fault. Murphy gets blown away.
But they had a cup of coffee together. It was so, so nice.
They share. They're already bonded as partners in that first moment. What do you think about that scene where Murphy goes in and gets shot up like Swiss cheese?
Well, it's also his fault too, because stolen money ain't worth running in on like 7 guys by yourself. Mm-hmm. Even if you are a cop.
Agreed.
They probably would have told him hold back, but they didn't. He went in. If I remember correctly from the reboot to kind of fix that, they made it didn't they make it like a setup on Murphy?
I don't even remember.
I think they
tried to block that out. Yeah.
Yeah, I think they made it like a setup, like the car bombing a setup, because they already had they had the RoboCop thing in plan, so they wanted to get a candidate. So
right, because like when you watch RoboCop, you're kind of thinking like this is a dumb plan. Like clearly they went to the warehouse for a reason to get it's cover for them, and so you don't just go in without backup.
Yeah, were they told not to send backup? Obviously, Boddicker wouldn't have been on because he was, working for Dick Jones, not Bob Morton. So, I mean, were they just hoping for some stupid cop to do something foolish and get blown away by Boddicker, who's already killed 32 cops at this point? I don't know. But, I mean, it's not that big of a plot hole. But, I mean, it is a fun little bit, though, watching, him get captured and Boddicker's goons sit there with fucking shotguns and just blow him away, and then after getting shot repetitively, Kurtwood Smith just fucking plugs him in the head, and that's it. Game over.
Yeah.
And then poor RoboCop Murphy wakes up with CRTV vision.
It's true. It's true.
If there's one thing for him to be pissed off about that has not aged well, woof.
That's right.
That 240p CRTV pixelation ain't
He's like,
gonna.
When I went into the job this morning, I had perfect 20/20 vision, everything in full nice color. I come out of surgery. It's fucking CRT vision. Terrible.
Got the lines and everything. Scan lines.
The one thing that I really love too is when they're whatever they're doing, soldering or screwdriving on his helmet, and you have the green grid on it, and it comes in at you, and it keeps going but it doesn't look like it's actually legitimately being screwed on.
The pinnacle of technology, like
absolutely.
He's got the green line, so he can track things more effectively.
Yeah, I do love the effects of the computer effects. It's great.
But I mean, like the whole and then that whole surgery bit is really cool too, because he's waking up and he's seeing what's going on. Originally, the one doctor's like, "Oh, we saved his left arm." And they're like, "Well, if we want fucking all synthetic," and they're like, "Are you serious?" And they're like, "Yeah, technically he's dead. He's got no rights. Cut his fucking arm off. We want synthetic." And they're like, "Okay." And then he wakes up again. Then it's fucking New Year's, and they're like, "Happy New Year! Oh, he's awake. Look at him! Wow, isn't this cool? Here, I'm gonna give him a kiss."
Yeah, it's the rebirth of Murphy, and at first he's not really supposed to be sentient, right? He's just supposed to be a walking robot that does the police bidding. You can't kill executives of Omnicorp. You can't you can't kill criminals. You can only take them into custody as best that you can. And eventually, because he meets with Lewis again, he starts to remember his past, and he starts to remember that he had a wife and a kid, and that he had a life besides the one that he's been programmed to have, which is an interesting concept of having a rebirth moment where the programming is overridden by your actual
I was gonna say
memory.
very similar to Total Recall and Blade Runner.
Yeah, it is. It is
the whole replicant idea.
It pretty much is Verhoeven reprising a lot of the same ideas that he would do in later movies, about memory and recall and what that means, what it means to have a human emotion like that. I think it's an interesting element to RoboCop that it is about the rebirth of Murphy as a person living in a android cyborg body. I think it does a good job with that. The one thing that's really funny throughout this film, which I will say I think the remake does do well, it is funny to think about nowadays with this film, and he's supposed to be a high-tech robot. He's fucking bombing around in a Ford Taurus. Whereas in the remake, they do what you would expect them to do. Give him like a fucking motorcycle and like a tricked-out car. Here he's like, "Oh, what's he doing? I'm just gonna get in a fucking..." I mean, they didn't have, I don't think, Crown Victorias at the time, but like imagine him just like, "I'm getting in the fucking Crown Victoria, I'm gonna track down crime, let's go." That's funny watching him. He doesn't have his own special car or motorcycle or anything. It's just, let me get in the Ford Taurus, let's go. Taking the kids to soccer practice after. The film does make use of some particularly high-tech equipment. So they've got those like guns that shoot basically like anti-tank missiles
with no recoil.
Yeah, they just whatever.
Fire away.
Yeah,
the one guy fucking fires from like his balls, just sitting there. Yeah, which that whole scene's hilarious too. And fucking, they're breaking the one guy out of Kurtwood Smith's breaking the one guy out of prison, the Gray Bar Hotel as they call it, and the one guy shows up like, "Hey, I found this sucks 6,000. Isn't it great? It's just like yours, Clarence." He's like, yeah. And he goes, takes the anti-tank thing out and like, "What are you going to do?" And he just shoots it. And he's like, "Fuck you." And he's like, "It ain't your car anymore." Which is awesome. It's such a dick thing. Just such a dick thing to do, but it's like fucking hilarious. It's just like,
I know. It's great. So, what do you think about the action in RoboCop? Because it does have quite a bit of, like we said, it has some ultraviolence, especially in the director's cut. Has quite a bit of explosions and and the anti-tank rifles and stuff like that. How do you think they do with the action in this movie?
Action is great. It's fun. A lot of fun. Watching Murphy track down villains is pretty fun. Watching him show up to the excuse me, sorry about that. to the convenience store and, like, you know, taking the guy out there. That's pretty fun. Watching him show up to the rape, which the action part of that's not, like, fun. But, like, just, like, the satirical nature of, like, that whole scene of, like, where the girl's gonna get raped. And he shoots the guy in the balls by, you know, because he's a robot, so he's got perfect aim, and, like, shoots her through her dress where, you know, he knows her legs aren't gonna be. So he shoots him in the balls. And then she's like, oh, you saved me. And then he's like, you've been a victim of rape, which is very stressful. I can refer you to counseling.
Yeah, right.
It's so, like, just cold and, like, you know, ridiculous. And I'm sure how we still today treat, you know, rape victims, because most rapes don't even get investigated. Most rape kits aren't even looked at. So, like, it's funny, like the obviously the rape's not funny, but, like, just, like, how, like, cold and callous this protector of the streets, you know, truly is when he's functioning as intended is hilarious. You know, makes for good comedy. But besides that, like, the end showdown's really great at the steel mill. Watching the, you know, Kurtwood Smith and his gang just fucking firing those anti-tank rifles off. The one guy driving the fucking van into a toxic waste canister, which is just hilarious. That there's just a toxic waste canister labeled toxic waste just lying around, and then he gets, you know, melted into this Cronenberg monster is awesome. And then watching him lumber around until he eventually gets fucking mowed down by Kurtwood Smith's car is great. It's absolutely great. And, like, it's great body horror too.
Yeah,
it's awesome.
They did a really good job with the effects on that one. You know, it is great body horror, and it kind of comes out of nowhere too. You know, because you're not really expecting something like that in this movie.
No, because it's very much just explosions and guns and, you know, squibs. Mm-hmm. And there you get, like I said, like Cronenberg-esque level of, like, oh my god, like what the hell is that? It's great though, like, you know.
I also think we got to talk about how good of a job Miguel Ferrer does as Bob Morton, which is as a smarmy executive, he does a perfect job of pulling that off. There's that one scene where he's got the two women in his apartment, and they're doing cocaine off of the table, and basically just, you know, getting ready to have a threesome, and then Kurtwood Smith barges in. Bitches leave. It's great. It's amazing. It's an amazing moment. But I think, like, Bob Morton does a really good job of being, like, that smarmy executive.
He's no friend.
Pulls it off.
Don't let, like, you know, don't let him fool you. He's no friend in the film.
Oh yeah.
Not only that, I think his character is, like, the inspiration of Eric and Billy Madison. Like, you know, the guy that Billy Madison's, like, you know, fighting against.
Yeah.
Like, he's got that same smarmy, like, you know, I'm gonna beat you, and, you know, kind of attitude. It's awesome. Everyone in this film is really good. Peter Weller, I think, is probably the greatest unsung hero in this film. Because as human Alex Murphy, he does a great job. He's the few minutes that he actually gets to portray Alex Murphy as an actual person, he's great.
Yeah, very charismatic. Yep.
He's very charismatic. Like, it's kind of surprising, like, he hasn't, like, had, like, an extensive, like, action career after this, because he's a very charismatic human being, and somebody that is not, like, imposing, but, like, you know, somebody you could take as a serious threat, and he's, you know, very great. And then when he becomes RoboCop, his movement, the way he plays RoboCop is great. He's, you know, got, like, the robotic, you know, movement down, the mannerisms, the talking. He's very believable. And then as he slowly starts to refine himself as, you know, Murphy, and become slightly, you know, gaining slightly more of his humanity back, he does a terrific job at it. And I think he's easily the most unsung hero in all this film.
Yeah, and he kind of pulls off the same thing that would later happen with, you know, The Mandalorian, where you have a character that is pretty much hidden with their face for most of the runtime of the show or the movie, but still able to come off as charismatic. And I think that, that's kind of started here with RoboCop. Peter Weller does a really good job of first being very, very likable as Alex Murphy, moving into RoboCop, who is supposed to have no emotion, completely, shut down. And then again, moving back into finding himself as Murphy, as RoboCop, and kind of having to do a combination of, who he once was and then who he kind of is now because of his cyborg nature. He does a really good job with that. How do you feel about the iconic, and well, I guess now iconic, RoboCop music?
To be honest with you, it's more understated than I remember it being. Mm-hmm. It's been a couple of years since I've seen it. The film really, at least in my mind, only really sticks out like RoboCop's theme. Is like when we get to kind of see like these triumphant moments, but for the most part, it's pretty understated. Mm-hmm. Like very small, quiet for the most part, but like when it is used, like very quiet, synth tones.
I think it comes up a lot more in RoboCop 3. Like I think they use it all the time in RoboCop 3 as like the specific RoboCop theme music. So maybe that's why you tend to think like it was used more than it truly was, because you're thinking of RoboCop 3.
Mm-hmm. Which I would agree with. But I mean, it is good. It is good, but it's much more subtle than what I was expecting from this film. What do you think of Kurtwood Smith?
I think he does a really good job. He is I don't know. He's not like your normal henchman character. He has like a personality to him that kind of does not come off the same as like the usual lead bad guy who is like driven by whatever he's driven by. Like Boddicker in the film almost has like no drive, really. He's just like does whatever he wants to do. Which
he's mayhem incarnate.
That's right, yeah. And that's kind of different from some of the other villains of the 80s movies, like Gruber from Die Hard, who is driven. He has a specific goal in mind, so he's very driven in a specific regard. Whereas Boddicker is really not driven by anything, and to some extent makes his own decisions. Because we see that in the film when Dick Jones is like saying, "Oh, you've got to help me out with this problem too. We've got to blow up RoboCop," and he's like, "That's not my problem. I don't give a shit what happens to that whatever." And then basically Dick Jones offers him like a whole area of Detroit, and then that's when he's encouraged to do this thing. But basically Boddicker makes his own decisions, and I think I like that a lot about the character and how Kurtwood Smith portrays it, because he really has this aloof nature to him that comes off really well in RoboCop. Other than that, was there anything else that we didn't touch on that you wanted to go over?
That might be about it. I mean, it's kind of a sacred cow of a film, which when usually the few times we have done a film like this, we've kind of already stated there's not really going to be much more that we can add to the film that hasn't already been stated.
Yeah,
so.
It's definitely become part of the canon of action movies for sure, one of the leads, and it's certainly for good reason. It's a really fun movie overall, but yeah, there's not a lot more that we can add to it. So on a scale of 0 to 10, Ed 209's falling down the stairs. It's like such a pathetic scene.
It's great too because it's so extended. Like watching, like a child, like going into a pool. Like, oh, it's cold. Like what's cool? Like no one thought like how's it gonna deal with stairs?
Yeah. Well, and not only that, when it falls down the stairs and it just makes a really pitiful like, and it's so weird too because it was like it was programmed to like make that sound when it fell over. It's great.
Well, what if it falls ass over tea kettle? Well, it's not going to happen, but if it does,
program this sound to be made.
Well, it's also weird too that the Ed like it growls like a cat, like Well, speaking of, what a dumb idea, too. Oh, we're going to have these things patrol the streets. It's going to be your cops. How safe would you feel with the fucking lumbering around Ed 29 walking around with chain guns on it, being like, you've illegally parked, you have 20 seconds to move your car before, physical force. Like, would you feel safer in your neighborhood?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
It's like just such a ridiculous idea, but I mean...
Would you dare you say that's the same idea of arming teachers in schools?
No, it is, but like I said, like the satire is lost on people because, like, again, some people sat there and thought, like, you're right. Our cops need tanks.
we do need more protection.
So I get the satire, but like it's just if you sit there and think about it logically, it's like what a fucking stupid idea. No, I wouldn't feel safer with these goddamn cretinous bots lumbering about my streets. Even in the town of like 15,000 people I live in, I would not feel safer. I would rather, deal with a criminal element than having these things fucking traipse about the neighborhood and like gun down some child because he jaywalked. But that's the America we live in today. So,
that's right.
It's timely. I'll give this film, out of 10 pathetic Ed bots trying to go downstairs, I'll give it a 9.5. RoboCop's one of my favorite films of all time. It's a perfect action film. It's well paced. It's well acted. The action scenes are great. Paul Verhoeven delivers on the satire. It's delightful. Peter Weller is great and makes RoboCop iconic. Kurtwood Smith is such a delightfully smug, chaotic bastard in this. He's delightful. Miguel Ferrer, as you said, as Bob Morton, as a slimy 80s corporate exec, does a great job. Everyone in this film does a great job. The action is great. It's well paced. It's well thought out. The satire is smart. It's on point. It's still very poignant today. And it's not like rub your nose in it. Like, here's what you're fucking supposed to see. It's on the nose, but it's not like it's on the nose to where like you're like gonna have to think about it or it's too obvious. It's great. This is a great film. 9.5. It's one of my favorite Paul Verhoeven films. It's a toss-up on what one is my favorite, but I think it's great. There's a reason why 35 years out it's still part of the cultural zeitgeist. Why we're getting a video game next year, which I can't wait to play, because I think regardless of whether or not that's actually good or not, I'm just kind of glad because to see RoboCop kind of come back, because since 2014 with the remake, we haven't it's kind of disappeared with good reason. But I think as timely as it was during the 80s with Reagan, with Reagan's policies, it's still timely today with the America that we live in today. And there's a lot to glean from this film. So I'd say 9.5.
Yeah, I would give this a 9. I think that it's a really fun movie. It's a great action movie, but it has a lot of great satire to it too. A lot of poking fun and criticism at the whole corporate nature of the Omnicorp Corporation. I think that everybody does a really good job, from everybody in the Omnicorp to Alex Murphy is Peter Weller's portrayal of Alex Murphy, and also RoboCop himself. And Nancy Allen does a really good job too as Lewis, and playing a strong female character, which is pretty interesting from a movie in the 80s, which for the most part often didn't have female characters except for people for the main protagonist to sleep with. So
where that's what 9, you're right, 9. Where's the sex between a robot and woman?
That's right. Yeah, we miss out on that part. No, but I think other than that, they did a really good job with everything else. It has great special effects, got great gore, especially if you watch the director's cut. I think that those elements to the director's cut, where it's ultra-violent, really bring to light the satiricism of it, instead of like the, how the MPA took it as just like violence for the sake of it. It's obviously satirical, to portray the violence in its way. It's very unrealistic, squib-like, but it's very fun to watch. So it really reminds of like the other ultraviolent horror films of the 80s, which kind of took things to their extreme. In this case, the extremity wasn't intentionally meant to be like gross out. It was meant to be, oh, this is so ridiculous. And I like that about RoboCop. I think it's, overall just a really entertaining movie, and there's a reason why it's still around and still super popular to this day. All right, so for next week, we have decided that we are going to do, what did we decide? What did we decide? Which one was it?
Wow. Chuck Norris.
Missing in Action. That's what it was. Missing in Action. Yeah. Should be a fun time. We did a Chuck Norris movie last year for Red Hot 80s Action Summer.
And I miss it terribly.
You had to have another one. You were just...
I almost want to rewatch Invasion USA again.
You should rewatch it, but...
Because it's so fucking stupid, but it's so fucking great. I will never forget Chuck being like, "You're gonna get so many lefts, you're not gonna know what's right."
You're just craving the Norris. You and your mom.
Chuck and Norris. It makes me think of the days of Conan when he used to have the Chuck Norris lever.
The Chuck. Pull it again. It's great.
When are we having a Walker marathon?
You know what? I don't know if I could get through Walker.
No one can get through Walker.
It's so cringy now. It's not even good bad. It's just bad.
No, Walker. No, I thought you were talking about the remake Walker. I'm talking about Walker Texas Ranger.
That's what I'm talking about. It's so bad.
No, it's so good. It's UPN Gold.
I don't know.
How can you not like it? What do you mean it's cringy?
Makes me cringe.
What? Constantly having like a Native American around that
Chuck
he's
Norris
friends
is
with?
fucking 82 years old?
Yeah, he's old as
He's
shit.
fucking
bud.
82 years old?
Yeah, he's old.
What the fuck? I did not know that.
He was winning karate championships in the fucking 60s. Yeah, and he's old.
I did not realize he was that old.
Yeah, he's old.
Good lord.
You don't look it, though.
Good for him. You know what? Good for him.
Don't you want to hear the dulcet sound of when we start Walker Texas Ranger Month? And then, in the eyes of the ranger, the unsuspecting stranger better know what's wrong from right.
82 years old. Man. Good for him. I'm stuck on that. Well, may we all live to have such a hale and hearty life as Chuck Norris.
Well, we found out Kurtwood Smith's almost fucking 82.
Yep, he's almost he's 79 years old. Going strong in that 90s show.
Is that going to be like a Netflix thing or what?
I'm not sure. It certainly looks like it could be one of those streaming service only things. Like kind of like Fuller House, Dig it in. Everywhere you look. Didn't watch that, by the way.
Well, who would? Full House sucks.
My sister. My sister loves Full House.
Well, your sister's a fool.
And how can you do Full House anymore? You're missing Bob Saget, so.
I thought you were going to say Lori, whatever her name, in jail.
No, she's in rich person's jail. She can still shoot film. Are you kidding me?
When you're lost out there and paying to get your kid into a school that they didn't deserve to go to. Everywhere you look. Whatever happened to Dave Coulier?
Probably just living the good life now.
He was living the good life in the 90s when he was starring on Full House and dating Alanis Morissette.
And he's probably just sick of making mouth noises.
I don't know why it's so funny.
He was on Worst Cooks in America in 2020.
Wasn't he on like a season of Surreal Life?
Yes, he was. Yep.
What a life. I went from Full House to a season of Surreal Life.
I saw and it was on America's Most Talented Kid. I thought it was America's Most Wanted at first. I was like, oh wow. He also made America's Most Wanted. Whoops. No, not that one. Okay, so
I thought he was on the same season of Surreal Life as Bronson Pinchot, but he wasn't.
No.
What season was Bronson Pinchot on? This is gonna haunt me now. I gotta look it up. I don't know why, but I used to watch Surreal Life. Season 5, my bad. Season 5, Bronson Pinchot was on. Speaking of, we thought about doing Beverly Hills Cop, so we
did.
Could have had Bronson Pinchot.
Thought about it, but you decided you want to do Missing in Action instead.
Because you know what? Enough people. Well, you know what? Maybe we should have done Beverly Hills Cop because that's got Judge Reinhold.
I know, right? It's got a glorious lineup. All right. Well,
I can't believe you never seen.
No.
What was it like? What movie did you get Beverly Hills Cop 3 out of?
Oh, it was Jason Goes to Hell. I bought Jason Goes to Hell from FYE. Got it home, opened it up. Hey, look at that! Beverly Hills Cop 3's in here. I never ended up watching it either. It was funny, and I just kept it around. I don't know what to do with it.
Well, see, we'll say that DVD for the day. Oh my God, Beverly Hills Cop 3 came out in '94. Eddie Murphy was on Hard Times.
Yeah. That was funny. Yeah. Oh, look at that.
Oh, what's an FYE?
All right, well, if you want to continue our Red Hot 80s Action Summer, Part 2, Heat Wave Edition, you can subscribe to us on pretty much any podcasting app that you can think of. We're on Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, our home base at anchor.fm. Subscribe to us on there, leave us a nice review. That always helps us out. We're on Facebook and Twitter. You can just search for us on there, Blood and Black Rum Podcast. We have an email address at bloodandblackrumpodcast@gmail.com. Write to us. Let us know what you like, what you don't like, what you want to hear us cover for movies. We'll take that into consideration. And we also have a donation page at patreon.com/bloodandblackrumpodcast. You can donate to us, and we'll put that money back towards beer for the show. So thanks a lot in advance. For next week, we're doing Missing in Action. You'll want to stay tuned for that. That's going to round out our Red Hot 80s Action Summer. And then we're probably going to move directly into our Halloween season. So you'll want to stay tuned for all of the stuff that we have on tap for you there. Should we... Did we decide on our Halloween season? Are we going to do what we talked about?
It's like 80-20, because I still have some kind of ideas running.
You have some... Okay, so it's possible what we talked about, and there may be, maybe some change-ups to that. So you'll definitely want to stay tuned for the Halloween season, though. We do episodes every single week through Halloween, so September and October we'll probably put out, 8 episodes? So
yeah,
stay tuned.
7, 8.
Yep.
We might. You know what? Maybe we're just gonna do every Costas Mandalore film that we haven't done. That's not tied to.
We're gonna have to do Halloween Ends as well. So just keep that in mind.
Is that coming out this year?
I think it's coming out this October.
I have not seen any promotional shit for it.
Yeah, I don't think we've. I don't think there has been any promotions as of yet, but I do think it's running this October.
Let's take a quick look, because I'm intrigued. Halloween Ends?
Yep.
Evil Dies... No, that's not true. Evil Dies Tonight. That was the last film. They lied.
Yeah, I think it's releasing this October. Yeah, October 14th. Yep.
Week before my birthday.
Yep. So we got that too.
God, when did Halloween Kills come out?
Last year.
Good Lord. Oh my God. They sped that up. Well,
because Halloween Kills got delayed, so this was kind of
because of
already.
COVID.
Yeah.
Yeah, because of COVID. No, but I mean, like, oh God, I can't believe it's been since 2018 since the. What a good film that was.
I'm
I have to listen to that
I'm
review
both interested and also simultaneously have low expectations for Halloween Ends.
I mean, after the first one being great and the second one being total shit, yeah, no, I would say I'm totally in that same boat too.
Yeah,
because I mean, the poster's cool. The poster's pretty cool actually, but yeah, I mean, it's. Let's see if they can cram in like Halloween 5. Donald Pleasance in there. Oh, he's here. He's here.
I drank too much.
Like they did with Halloween Kills. Michael's still here.
His eyes. Yeah, no, it's good. Yeah, I'm simultaneously interested in low expectations. So, but yeah, we got that. We'll talk about the rest of our Halloween episodes to come. So stay tuned for those. Hopefully you tune in next week for our episode on Missing in Action. And until then.
Take care.